2 is officially in the books. It's time to turn the page, move on to week 3. And we're going to start things off this week with our top DST streamers as well as our top 12 rankings. So let's go ahead and get right to it. We're going to start with our top 12 rankings of the week. And let's just hit on a few of these. We're going to start with the Green Bay Packers versus the Cleveland Browns. Now, the Packers could technically be on this list for streamers, but 55% is a little bit too high for me. But I will say if they are available, they definitely should be added. The Packers defense has been nothing short of phenomenal to start the season. They are currently tied for second in sacks. They have the fifth highest pressure rate on the year. They have a limited opposing offense, just 15.5 points per game, which is a third lowest rate in football. They have done this against two of the better offenses as well, against the Commanders and Lions. And next up is a matchup against the Browns, who they've allowed the fourth most fantasy points to opposing defenses on the season. So Green Bay is my number one defense of the week. Next up is going to be the Bills versus the Dolphins. The Dolphins defense bounced back last week after a really poor performance against the Ravens in week 1 by finishing as the number 6 DST in week 2 with 4 sacks and a fumble recovery against the Jets. Next up is a matchup, though, against the reeling Dolphins on Thursday Night Football. Dolphins have allowed the 9th highest pressure rate through the first 2 weeks of the season, which fits perfectly with the Bills. They have the 12th highest pressure rate. The Dolphins have allowed the second most fantasy points to opposing defenses. The Bills are a top 5 unit for me this week. Next up, let's talk about the Steelers. The Steelers have had a rough start in week 1, but bounced back last week, finished the 11th overall DST in week 2. This week, they will look to keep things rolling against the Patriots, who have struggled to protect Drake May. They currently have allowed the 6th highest pressure rate and the 4th most sacks. And then lastly, the Kansas City Chiefs. The Chiefs defense has had a rough start as well, facing the Chargers and Eagles. However, they have an opportunity to turn things around this week against the Giants. Through the first 2 games, the Giants have allowed the 11th highest pressure rate and the 14th most fantasy points to defense. The Giants are a 6-point home dog, have the 4th lowest implied team total this week. I expect the Chiefs defense to bounce back in a big way this week. So let's move over to some of our streaming options of the week. Now, these are defenses that are rostered in less than 25% of leagues. First up is going to be the Seattle Seahawks. Now, the Seahawks last season finished as the number 6 overall scoring defense, but no one seems to really care as they're only rostered in 24% of leagues currently. And through the first 2 weeks, the Seahawks have the 4th highest pressure rate and have created turnover on 17% of drives, which is also the 4th highest rate in the league. Next up is a home matchup against the Saints, who allow the 12th most fantasy points to opposing defenses. The Seahawks are once again an easy top 10 defense this week and should continue to be a top 5 scoring defense on most weeks. Next up, let's move over to the Colts versus the Titans. They're only rostered in 18% of leagues. The Colts are one of the more surprising defensive units through the first 2 weeks of the year. They are currently the DST 8 in fantasy points per game. While they have struggled to get to the quarterback with the 9th lowest pressure rate, they face a Titans offense that has allowed a pressure on 33% of dropbacks, which is by far the highest in the league. They have also done a great job creating turnovers, as they have turned over opposing offenses on 25% of drives, which is the 2nd highest rate in the league as well. The Titans have allowed the 5th most fantasy points to opposing defenses, which make the Colts a solid streaming defense in week 3. Lastly, let's hit on the Falcons versus the Panthers. Falcons are currently tied with the Seahawks as the number 1 scoring defense, though most of that came through with their 21 fantasy points they scored last week against the Vikings. They recorded 6 sacks, 2 INTs, 2 fumble recoveries, and on the season, the Falcons have the 5th most sacks and they have the 7th highest turnover rate. The Falcons will have an opportunity to keep things rolling against the Panthers, who have yielded the 3rd most fantasy points to opposing defenses. So those are the top streaming defenses of the week for me. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments section below. We'll be sure to get to every one of your questions and get them answered. Good luck in week 3. We'll see you on the next one. Bye.